Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Can we talk prospecting, please? Can we talk about prospecting? Now, what I want to do right now is I want to talk about what is prospecting. Let's go ahead and define that phrase. Prospecting is the act of getting leads into your sales funnel using different marketing strategies. Let me say that again. Prospecting is the act of getting leads into your sales funnel using different marketing strategies. Now, we've defined prospecting, but what's a sales funnel? Well, let's go ahead and define a sales funnel. Now, a sales funnel, just much like a funnel, has three parts. Three main components. The top part, the top of the funnel, then there's the middle of the funnel, and then there's the bottom of the funnel. Now, the goal is to get as many leads into the top of the funnel. Now, when we talk about leads, we're talking mostly about unqualified leads. Talk about cold and warm, right? Unqualified leads typically in the top of the funnel. Now, our job is to qualify those leads. So that means that's the middle of the funnel. The qualification process is where we reach out to these leads and we talk to them. Figure out, is there a budget? Is there a need? Do they have authority to make a decision? Is there a timeline from when they want to make a decision? Do they have not only a willingness to buy, but a propensity to buy? That's where you qualify them. And so let's say that you get 100 leads, right? Over the month, you collect 100 leads. But when you contact each of these leads, you qualify them through a qualification process that you have. These are questions you're going to ask to see if they fit your ideal customer profile. Let's say that after 100 conversations, you realize that only 20 of those 100 are qualified leads. Now, a qualified lead that drops out of the bottom of the funnel, those 20 that drop out of the bottom of the funnel, I call those prospects. A prospect is a qualified lead. Let me say that again. A prospect is a qualified lead. A lead is simply somebody whose contact information you have who has not been qualified. They go through the funnel, you qualify them, the middle of the funnel, and then what happens at the bottom of the funnel after they've been qualified, boom, they are officially prospects. Now, once you have these prospects, now you got to shove them into your sales pipeline. So they're out of the sales funnel. Now they enter your sales pipeline. And a sales pipeline is best defined as follows. A sales pipeline is a list of qualified leads or opportunities which you will seek to convert into customers, or if they're past customers, you want to sell them more. So there's two types of qualified prospects. People who've never bought from you before, or people who have bought and maybe you want to upsell them or cross-sell them. So people in your pipeline are all opportunities for you to make money. These are qualified leads. Prospects are qualified leads that are in your pipeline. So a pipeline is essentially your list of revenue opportunities. To convert prospects into sales or to sell to an existing customer, to do this, you need a sales process. Yeah, it gets deeper, doesn't it? You start with a sales funnel, you move them into the pipeline, and within that pipeline, you have a sales process. Now, a sales process are predefined steps that you go through in order to close a deal. Let me say that again. A sales process. These are, you're going to take people in your pipeline. These are qualified leads in your pipeline, list of revenue opportunities. You're going to put these folks through your sales process, right? You're going to walk them through certain steps. Things you're going to do, you're going to meet with them, for example, the first time. Maybe call them up, set up the meeting. Have a meeting with them, maybe do a presentation, maybe even do some type of field trial or demo, and then come back and maybe give them a proposal, and then close the proposal, close the deal. That's a typical sales process. Now, that differs from the buying process. Customers have their own process for buying, but that's a topic for another podcast. But what I want to emphasize in this podcast is there's three main components in selling, and that is the sales funnel. Again, people come into the sales funnel as leads. They're qualified in the middle of the funnel. They drop out of the bottom as qualified leads, i.e., They're called prospects. A prospect is a qualified lead. You've talked to them, you've qualified them, they fit your customer profile, they have the budget, they have the authority, they have the need, they're willing to buy soon. These are people who you want to close. These people, let's say you went from 100 to 20, you shove them into your sales pipeline. A pipeline is basically a list of revenue opportunities, prospects who are likely to buy. Most salespeople are measured on pipeline. Now, for each of these individuals, you're going to have to walk them through a sales process, a process or predetermined steps that you define to help you close those deals or up or cross-sell them. That is a sales process. Now, it's good to have these three things in mind. Sales funnel, they come out of the bottom of the funnel as prospects. You shove them into your sales pipeline, so to speak, and you go through a sales process in order to close them. Now, how long it takes you to close that deal is called a sales cycle. So if you close the deal in 1 week, the sales cycle is 1 week. Now, in a simple sale, guess what? It'll close fast. In a long, complex sale, it'll take a longer time. So in a simple sale, you may be able to close it in 1 day. In a complex sale, it can be 6 months, 12 months, and I've even seen 18 months. So it really depends. But it also depends on where you start the clock. Do you start the clock at the top of the sales funnel, or do you start the clock, so to speak, at the beginning, at the bottom of the funnel, or the beginning of the sales pipeline? So if you start from lead to close, that's the top of the funnel, lead to close, that's one sales cycle. Most people like to start after they qualified the prospect and they get them into the pipeline. That's called qualified lead or prospect to close. These are different metrics that you can use to measure how effective you are in moving people through your sales funnel, through your sales process, walk them through the sales process or pipeline, and then see what the sales cycle is. And it's always good to understand what is your sales cycle. I can't tell you how many customers I talk to, not customers, salespeople I talk to, who don't even know what their sales cycle is. I always get, well, it depends. Well, I understand it depends, but the reality is there's got to be some type of average. So for example, for customer A types, guess what? The average sales cycle is 2 weeks. For customer B types, typically is 4 to 6 weeks. That's the type of data you should have in your head. Remember, in selling, you got to know your numbers. And if you don't know your numbers, you're guessing at selling. So keep this in mind. We all have a sales funnel. From the sales funnel, put into a sales pipeline, where you should all have a sales process. And our job is to shrink that sales process so we can reduce our sales cycle. Because we all know if you can shorten the sales cycle, you'll sell more faster. Keep these things in mind. And again, definitions matter. So when you're talking to people, make sure we have those 4 things clear. There's a sales funnel, sales pipeline, sales process, and a sales cycle. You have now been officially informed. And that is it for the Sales Influence Podcast. Don't forget to leave me some feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Let me know what you think. I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, check out my online sales training platform. You know the deal. The Sales Velocity Academy. You want to sell more faster? Check it out at salesvelocityacademy.com. That is it. I want to thank you, and this is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.